everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What the Forensics. My name's Nicole. I'll be emceeing today, and as always, I'm joined here by the lovely Rebecca and Journey. This week, Journey's going to be telling us about the case of Sheila Warren. Um, Never heard of her, so I'm very intrigued. I'm excited to learn a bit more, and it's always fun having that shock factor when we go into these knowing nothing. So I'm excited to learn alongside our listeners. Basic housekeeping again, if you could leave us reviews or comments, we'd love to read them. They do help us out and they help gauge kind of where to go with our episodes. If you want to like, subscribe, and follow where you can, this does help us grow and reach more people. And that, just to kind of keep in mind, we only have so many resources available to us. So we do our best to research. We can make mistakes. Let us know. We'll be happy to have those conversations and amend them where possible. But we do hope you enjoy learning alongside us. And as per usual, this is a true crime, so there is some discussion of will be some discussions of murder, and there will also be discussions of clowns this episode. Like kind of a listener's discretion, not really. If clowns irk you, just don't look at photos of clowns, I guess, and just imagine we're not talking about clowns. But they are related to this case. So do with that what you will. And Journey, would you like to tell us a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah, clowns are a pretty small part, but I know that some people are quite sensitive to clowns.
Yeah.
Myself being one of them. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew that going in. Okay, so on the morning of May 26, 1990, 40-year-old Marlene Warren was having breakfast with her 21-year-old son and his friends when they saw a clown walk up to the door with flowers and balloons. This wasn't too out of the ordinary since Joe had broken his leg, so they thought it was just someone sending well wishes in the forms of flowers and balloons. Marlene opens the door and exclaims, "How pretty." The clown then shoots her in the head, turns around, and walks calmly back to their car.
What?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, we're not even just going to ease into this one. Okay.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
What?
And that's exactly how that happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Hook, line, sinker. I'm ready. This episode, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
That is whack. I'm okay. Let's go.
Yes. So the clown shoots her, turns around, calmly walks back to their 1990 white Chrysler LeBaron, which is important later, before driving away like nothing happened. Marlene's son Joe gets into Marlene's car and attempts to follow the clown, but wasn't able to, which to me is odd because if the clown was driving so calmly, I feel like you should have been able to follow them or catch up to them or do something.
Is this the one with the broken leg?
Yeah.
Maybe his driving leg was broken?
Maybe. I don't know. He also just heard his mom get shot and
yeah, maybe
like
there's shock factor.
It's not on him to catch
trauma.
The killer.
Yeah.
That's very
good
fair.
for him for attempting, though, I will say.
Yes.
Very good for him for having the thought of I will catch this person.
Yes, and he must have really good friends because they stayed with his mom. They called 911. They waited for help to arrive while he went to go track down the clown killer.
That's very kind of them.
Very kind of them. So Marlene was barely alive when paramedics arrived and she was taken to the hospital and put on life support. 2 days later, she was taken off of life support because there was no hope of recovery and she ended up passing away.
Sad.
Very sad. When Joe was talking to the police, he described the clown as wearing solid black shoes, white gloves, and having big dark brown eyes. Joe described the clown to police as 6'1", skinny, and male. He said that they also had white face paint on, an orange wig, and a big orange smile.
Ugh.
So very clownish. I know, just horrific. So that was the crime. I'm going to go back a little bit and introduce you to more of the people. So before her death, Marlene Warren was living in an affluent, well-off suburb of Palm Beach County in Wellington, Florida, with her husband Michael Warren and her son Joe. Mike and Marlene had gotten married when Joe was 3, and Marlene had had Joe from a previous relationship, and his father was no longer around. And Marlene had owned several businesses, including apartment complexes and a local used car dealership called Bargain Motors. I believe the majority of these businesses were in her name. I think some of them were in her and Mike's name. However, if they got divorced, Mike would get half, but if she died, he would get 100% of them. So I don't know the legalities of that.
Okay.
Um, that being said, Marlene has been threatening to divorce Mike for years over numerous affairs and a domestic violence incident, which, if there was one, then there was most likely more, unfortunately. And he didn't want to divorce her due to how the assets would split. And knowing this, Marlene confided in her mom and her son that, quote, if anything happens to me, Mike did it, end quote.
Ooh, okay.
So she was not feeling very safe in her marriage, understandably, and wanted out, but knew that if she tried to divorce, Mike would have her killed or something. So, knowing this, the police started looking into Mike, and they learned that he was also rumored to be having an affair with his 27-year-old employee, Sheila Keen. The suspects became pretty clear once they learned this. However, Mike did have an alibi. He was in a car with his friends on their way to a racetrack when his wife was killed, so he was nowhere near the crime scene and had many people backing him up.
Hmm.
They looked into Sheila, and her alibi was that she was driving around looking for cars to repossess, but was unable to give them any addresses or solid information about her whereabouts when Marlene was killed. And when Sheila and Mike were questioned about their affair, they both said that they were just friends. However, when police talked to Sheila's neighbors, they learned that the neighbors believed that Sheila and Mike were actually married because of how much
Oh,
time Mike had been spending at her apartment.
damn. Okay.
Yeah. And Bargain Motors employees had reported seeing them kissing and having sex in the office.
They
Oh,
have.
So,
Okay,
y-
that's not great.
not good at all. So it was
I
pretty
think
clear
they're
that they
more
were
than
having an affair.
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't want to admit to it. And later, they're like, they say they weren't ashamed of having an affair, but they just didn't want to admit to it because they were both married at this time.
I also feel like they maybe didn't want to admit to it because his wife was just murdered, and they're like obviously going to be suspects if they admit to
Yeah.
having an affair.
100%. So Sheila Keen was 27 years old. She was married to Richard Keen, who is 46. And they worked together repossessing cars for Bargain Motors. So Bargain Motors would hire them to go repo cars for them. They had gotten married in 1987 when Sheila was 6 months pregnant with their son. However, in January 1990, they separated after a domestic violence incident. And fun fact, when Richard was 22, he was the director of the United Klans of America, a KKK organization.
Oh, that's not
cool.
good.
Okay.
Yeah. And he spent quite a bit of time in prison. So that is just
Not a good guy.
not a good guy. It kind of tells you a little bit about the kind of people Sheila was hanging around and
Mm-hmm.
a little bit about who she was. Recently, Sheila had started working like at the physical Bargain Motors building, and it kind of made Mike mad because she was trying to boss people around and, quote, act like his wife, end quote. And so this resulted in them stopping taking their long lunches, which really made Sheila mad, according to other Bargain Motors employees. So there was a bunch of drama within their relationship and affair. But getting back to the crime and the investigation, police were able. Sorry, this is all over the place. There was no good way to kind of coherently set the scene.
Yeah.
That's fair. Sometimes there's just cases that are like that. It's like you
Yeah.
just got to get right into it.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah. Okay, so going back to the crime and the investigation, police were able to locate the costume store where a clown costume had recently been sold. They talked to the store employees and learned that a clown costume, a red nose, orange wig, white face paint and orange lipstick had been purchased right before closing on May 25th, 1990, by a tall brunette woman. And when these employees were shown a photo lineup, one of them identified Sheila Keene as the woman who purchased the clown stuff.
Hmm.
And police were also able to locate the grocery store where the balloons and flowers were purchased because one of the balloons said, "You're the greatest," and it was only sold at the specific grocery store.
Oh, that helps.
Yeah, it was quite lucky. The store employee's description of the person was a tall brunette woman wearing white gloves, which more or less matched the costume shop description. So they're kind of narrowing it down to Sheila Keene being the murderer. Police also located an abandoned 1990 white Chrysler LeBaron, which matched the description of the getaway car. And when they searched the car, they found orange synthetic fibers similar to the clown wig purchased, as well as brown human hair. I don't know how much hair they found. Um, Police then learned that this car was linked to Bargain Motors because a Mike and another employee had stolen it from a rival rental company recently.
Oh, that's not
Yeah.
great.
One source said that someone was trying to return their rental car but called the wrong number, and Bargain Motors pretended to be that rental company to come pick up that car. And then once the people realized that they had called the wrong number, they called that number back, and the employee on the other end was like, "I don't know you. We've never spoken before. Like, I don't know what you're talking about," pretending like they never knew them because they had successfully just stolen this car.
It honestly
Hmm.
just seems like such a shady business.
It oh yes, very shady. And so when police searched Sheila's closet, they found more orange synthetic fibers similar to those found in the LeBaron. They were also able to confirm that the brown human hair was visually consistent with Sheila's hair, although they weren't able to do any DNA testing since DNA analysis had only been around for about 5 years at this time and was still very much in its infancy.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the police were never able to find the gun or the costume used in this case, which is kind of wild,
Yeah, that's surprising.
right? And speaking of this being a shady business, while they were looking into Mike, they looked into Bargain Motors and discovered a crap ton of fraud. So,
I'm not
Mike,
surprised.
yeah, not shocking at all. Mike was arrested for racketeering, insurance fraud, and odometer tampering. He was
Hmm.
convicted on 43 counts of fraud.
God
Oh,
damn.
damn.
And he was sent to prison for 4 years.
Wow.
And they couldn't link him to Marlene's murder, so I believe they kind of used this fraud case to really throw the book at him and put him in jail because they knew he was kind of associated with her murder but couldn't link him. And unfortunately, police didn't feel like they had enough evidence to prosecute Sheila Keene for the murder of Marlene Warren, so they kept investigating. However, as the years progressed, the case kept getting colder and colder until 2017 when it was reopened by a cold case team. So 27 years later.
Wow.
And this cold case team was able to find some, like, quote unquote, important new evidence. And I believe my understanding of this was that this evidence was just finally being able to DNA test the hair found in the LeBaron.
That
Ah,
makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And what that testing told us was that Sheila Keene couldn't be ruled out as the owner of the hair.
Okay.
So, and I do talk a little bit about hair analysis to kind of refresh us a little bit at the end. So they used that to get a warrant for her arrest, but it's kind of weak in my opinion,
Mhm.
even though it's
Yeah.
looking pretty obvious that she did it. Police start looking into Sheila Keene, and they learn that she had married none other than Mike Warren, the husband of Marlene Warren.
Ooh.
Interesting. How many
Yeah,
okay, how long after? Because this
in
would have been in
2002.
20 okay. Oh, she married him in 2002.
Yeah, and then they learned that she married him in 2017. So they'd been married for 15 years at this time.
Wow. Okay. That's
Yeah.
While he was in jail?
He was only in jail for 4 years, so I believe he was
Oh,
out of
I see.
jail by this time.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, they reconnected once he got out of jail, and then by 2002, they'd gotten married. And they owned a burger joint called the Purple Cow in Kingsport, Tennessee.
That's an internet provider.
Oh, fun. And they also learned that she had dyed her hair blonde and started going by Debbie for some
Okay.
reason. There wasn't really a good reason for her going by Debbie. I think she just didn't want to go by Sheila anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it
Oh,
was
that's
because of her being tied to Mike's first wife's murder or what.
I feel like that's
But
very possible. Like, just wants to
yeah,
kind of put it behind her, and just like, if people don't know my name is uh
yeah, Sheila
that
Keen,
name,
and they think it's
Sheila. Thank
Debbie.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm now Debbie Warren instead of, yeah. So police talked to their employees at the Purple Cow, and they learned that Debbie was a very mean boss, and it was rumored that she had killed Mike's ex-wife while dressed up as a clown. So it kind of sounded like she was bragging about it to her employees a little bit,
A little bit. Yep.
because how else would they know that? And they were like, she came to
Yeah.
work dressed as a clown one day, like on Halloween. And I'm like, okay, interesting. So, Sheila Keen Warren, or Debbie, was arrested on September 26, 2017, while driving home to their house in Abingdon, Virginia. She was charged with first-degree murder of Marlene Warren, and when she was being taken into custody, she said, quote, "Well, are you going to arrest him too?" End quote. And so
Okay,
police kind of
spill
like,
the beans, spill the
yeah,
tea.
right? They're like, okay, she obviously knows what she's being arrested for, and possibly Mike is related, I guess. However, they're still like they couldn't find any evidence linking him to his first wife's murder, so he was not able to be arrested. Her trial kept getting postponed for some reason, and it wasn't until April 5th, 2023. So she was in custody for 7 years, I think.
Wow,
And
wow.
they
Like, without
yeah,
trial or anything?
without trial, yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's unreasonable.
Yeah, agreed. I guess it would have been a little under 7 years. But on April 5th, 2023, which I think was 4 days before her trial was supposed to start or scheduled to start, they came to a plea agreement where Sheila agreed to change her plea from not guilty to guilty of second-degree murder. And in exchange, she was sentenced to 12 years in prison with conditions for time served since she had been in custody since 2017. So she was expected to be released in 2025. However, she was actually released on November 2nd, 2024 because she was
Damn.
so well behaved in prison or whatever.
That's so funny to me. They're like, you did a ridiculously heinous thing.
Mhm.
Well, you behaved really well while you were being punished.
Yeah. I agree. I also think it's kind of wild that she killed someone and got 12 years in prison.
I know. And like, I know she like took a plea deal and like pleaded to like second degree murder. But if it was in fact her in the clown costume went into the door, that is so premeditated. Unless she
Right?
just goes through her day-to-day life dressed as a clown. That
Yeah.
is so premeditated.
Okay, I agree. Cause like buying the clown outfit 3 days before
Yeah.
shows some kind of premeditation.
Yeah.
Disposing of the evidence as well, like having an affair with the husband. Like,
Yeah.
you would expect more than 12 years. At
Yeah,
least
I agree.
25.
Yeah, but they had like no evidence. And the evidence
Mhm.
they did have was over 30 years old at this point,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it hadn't been stored in the best conditions. They have pictures of it on the 48 Hours documentary I watched on it. And it was like ripped open. There was like fibers from the wig that they bought to compare the fibers to that was just ripped open, so could have gotten anywhere. Like there was a really high chance of contamination.
Mhm.
And
Right.
right before trial, one of their key witnesses who worked the trial 30 years ago ended up passing away.
Oh,
And so
that
most of his
sucks.
testimony, yeah, that was really unfortunate because most of his testimony was what their case was kind of based on.
I feel like if they were relying so heavily on that, like, why not record his statements before the trial just in case? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Was he like
especially if he's
ill or was it suspicious circumstances?
it sounded like he was just old.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my understanding. But no, it was really interesting to hear from both the prosecution and the defense about this case because they very much the prosecution was like, yeah, there's no ways anyone else didn't do it. Like, it was obviously her. Like, this is the evidence.
Hmm.
It's so clear. And then the defense was doing their job and was
Yeah.
like, no, like, this is the evidence. Like, there is reasonable doubt. So I kind of do think that if it had gone to trial, she would have been let go. Like, I
Mm,
think it
Yeah.
would have resulted in a hung jury
yeah.
That's yeah, that's fair.
because, and
So it's
I,
better to get her for something than nothing, I guess.
yeah, and I think that's kind of where the plea deal came into it was
Hmm.
because the prosecution may have realized like we don't really have a chance and at least we're getting her for something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least she has a record now. If she does anything else too.
Exactly. And to the very end, Mike and Sheila have claimed innocence, even though Sheila had to admit to killing Marlene as part of her plea deal. They were kind of like, do you admit to being the person standing there in the clown costume that shot her? And she's like, yes, I do.
Hmm.
And their kind of thoughts were that they just felt it was safer than risking a life sentence with a trial. And when asked about the plea deal, Mike said, quote, my wife did not commit this crime. It was difficult to see her plea to a crime she did not commit, but it wasn't worth the gamble when she was offered a deal that'll have her home in 16 to 18 months, end quote.
Like that, I understand that
I
too.
guess.
Yeah. I
It's
do like she's on trial for murdering your first wife.
Yeah.
And the way he kind of phrased that made me think that he might have had a bigger part in it than you
Well,
think.
intrigued too in terms of witness testimony compared to Sheila's physique. Because wasn't the clown
Mhm.
described as like
A
6 foot
man.
something, a man and whatnot? I guess it being in a clown costume, you can't tell 100%, but
Yeah.
it makes me think, okay, well, did they just hire someone then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, like murder for hire. That's also very possible.
Yeah. And in the documentary, they say that Sheila was like 5'10, 5'11 ish. So tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
Um,
I couldn't look at someone and say, yeah, that's about 6'1". Like I'm
yeah,
terrible with that sort of thing. So I can understand being off by a few inches.
same. And I wonder, like, she was a bit of a tougher woman because her job was repossessing cars and she wasn't afraid of anyone. So I wonder if she did have like a little bit extra muscle or
A bit
something.
more of a masculine build sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't really know. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of like you don't know. They were
Hmm.
like eyewitness testimony is so malleable that
Mm-hmm.
you really have no idea. And the prosecution does admit to that. Like you you can't depend on them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
as we know. But yeah, that was the defense's one of their major arguments was like, okay, well, Joe said the guy, like the clown was male. And they're like, well, how do you know? Because they're a clown.
Yeah.
But
That's true. They're wearing a lot of makeup. They're wearing a wig and like
yeah,
They're not
all that stuff.
talking. Yeah.
yeah. And even like not really being able to tie the car to the murder and then weekly tying Sheila to the car. Like there's just a lot of loose ends in this case.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to talk a little bit more about forensic hair analysis because I think it kind of will share with our listeners why I'm so doubtful on hair evidence. And I know we have talked about it in episodes past. I don't remember which one,
Mhm.
Hmm.
but we've definitely talked about it before.
Yeah.
So, hair evidence is frequently encountered in criminal investigations because hairs are readily lost from both victims and suspects during criminal activity. Like, we're constantly shedding. Same with like skin
Skin
cells and other
cells.
DNA. Yeah. So, forensic hair examinations start with examining the hair under a high-powered microscope. The microscopic analysis of these hairs can provide information such as racial characteristics of the hair donor, the likely origin of the hair, for example, head, pubic, facial, body, or limb, the growth phase of the root, and the presence or absence of artificial treatment, damage, or disease to the hair. And some of these features can aid in providing a physical description of a suspect and potentially some reconstructive information concerning actions that may have occurred during the commission of the crime, such as like breakage or whatever. If known hairs are available from the victim or the suspect, a microscopic comparison can be made using a comparison microscope, which was what was done in the case of Sheila Keene back in 1990. It was visually consistent, so they thought it was her. However, hair has not been found to be unique. We cannot prove that this hair came from the head of this individual and would never match any other individual ever. And only head and pubic hairs possess sufficient microscopic characteristics for microscopic hair comparison, supposedly. Yes. So this comparison may be used to provide a possible association between the individuals involved in a crime to the crime scene or to each other. And like I said, it's only possible because the microscopic characteristics observed in the hair of one individual are usually very different from those observed in the hair of another individual, supposedly. We can't really prove this. However, it does depend on the fact that biological processes can vary from one person to another, but also the individual's environment, for example, diet, chemical treatment, or damage to the hair and UV exposure, will create extra dimensions that are useful for comparison. But again, it cannot conclusively determine if a questioned hair came from a particular individual, and it is possible for two individuals to exhibit similar microscopic characteristics in their hairs, particularly if the hairs have limited microscopic properties in the cases of very light colored or gray hairs, or short or fine, or dark opaque hairs, which kind of feels like all the hairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Every hair.
So if you have hair, it won't match. But anyway, and we've harped on this a lot, but hair microscopy is basically just pattern matching. So it is very largely subjective, and there are no objective standards or really any standards in hair analysis. And like I've said a lot, it relies on the unproven assumption of uniqueness, and there is no scientific evidence that hairs are unique. So once the microscopic comparison of the hairs is completed, a microscopic examination of the hair root will assess the potential for DNA analysis, and hair can be used for either mitochondrial DNA or, if enough root tissue is present, to nuclear DNA analysis, because nuclear DNA is only found in the root.
I feel like this should be step one. Like,
Yeah.
see if there's DNA first, go with that. If there's not, okay, go further to see what else can be found.
Yeah, right. Because I feel like
Yeah.
doing the comparison first, like they might destroy the root tissue if they do comparison first. Like maybe not intentionally, but
Yeah,
hairs seem relatively delicate in terms of forensic evidence. So
exactly. And I feel like if you look at them and compare them and you're like, okay, they are not visually consistent, and then you don't DNA test it against someone and you like
Yeah.
let that suspect go, like it just feels like you should start with this DNA and then go to visual comparison.
Doing the visual comparison first, too, also feels like it opens the door for a lot of confirmation bias because you have
yeah.
probably a hair from a suspect or who you think has committed the crime and something from the scene. So, like, you're almost trying to match it. Whereas if you just
Yeah.
test for DNA first, you can be like, okay, is it there? Yes, no. If it's yes, does it bring them in as a suspect?
Yeah, I agree. And I also feel like, especially with this case specifically, like how often do you lose a hair with the root attached?
Yeah, true. Like
And
we shed a lot of hair, but we don't often lose the full thing, I feel like.
yeah, it's very, very rare. But getting a little bit more into the analysis side, if nuclear DNA analysis is successful, the profile can be compared to a known DNA sample from a suspect or victim and provide a near certain association to a single person, with the exception of identical twins. With regards to the limitations of nuclear DNA, it can only provide the identity of the individual the hair came from, but can't provide information regarding the circumstances of the crime, which kind of feels like common sense.
Yeah.
Um, they just can't prove if it's naturally fallen out or had been forcefully removed.
Yeah.
If the root is decomposed, indicating it came from a deceased individual, yeah. Additionally, the overwhelming majority of hairs found in forensic casework do not possess enough tissue to conduct nuclear DNA analysis, like we had kind of mentioned. So, when nuclear DNA is not possible, mitochondrial DNA analysis is often successful. And successful is a term that I would say very loosely describes this. While mitochondrial DNA cannot be used to unequivocally identify an individual, it can be used to exclude a large portion of the population as a possible donor.
Which is helpful.
Yes. And so it can provide very probative evidence. And as with nuclear DNA, mitochondrial DNA primarily provides information with regards to the identity of the hair donor, and again, does not provide additional information to help reconstruct the crime. And I think my biggest issue with mitochondrial DNA, and this case in particular, is that that was the sole evidence and they depended wholeheartedly on it because she couldn't be excluded
Mm-hmm.
as the hair donor. So, hair analysis, if you haven't guessed, should be used with caution. A study was done by the oh no, just I don't know who it was by, but of more than 320 exonerations in the USA, and over 70 of these exonerations involved the improper use of hair evidence. So,
Is this I don't know if you know this, but is the improper use like malicious intent improper use or just what am I trying to say? Like over like what happened in this. It was like a overconfidence in that evidence that resulted in negatively impacting a case. Was
yeah,
it
I
English? I don't know
don't
if it made
know,
sense. Okay.
but both would make sense.
Okay.
um, in 2012, kind of, I think it had to have been part of this study or something. The FBI acknowledged problems with hair microscopy and partnered with the Innocence Project and the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers to review cases from 1980 to 2000. And they identified 3 types of errors in examiner testimony, and at least one of these were present in 90% of the cases they reviewed. So, kind of like you said,
Wow.
Nicole, like just overconfidence in it. And so the first error was that the examiner claimed that a hair matched a unique person. Hair microscopy cannot uniquely identify one person as a source of a hair. And I feel like something we learned in school was that not like no forensic evidence will 100% match something. Like that's a very dangerous term to use.
Yeah, it's a little unprofessional to use it knowing what we know now.
Exactly. The second error was that the examiner assigned a probability to a source or gave an opinion about the rareness of the hair's characteristics, and there's no scientifically accepted statistics exist about the frequency with which particular characteristics of hair are distributed in the population. So again, hair has not been proven to be unique, and they would say like with X amount of certainty it came from this person. And the third error, and this one felt a little bit personal by the way it was worded, so I kind of changed the wording. The examiner cited the number of times they distinguished hairs in prior analysis in order to bolster their conclusion in the case.
Mm,
So they're like, in 300 of my past cases, I've correctly identified these hairs. So that's why I know that this is right.
right. Yeah.
But there's
Yeah,
no way
that's
to
not
know
great.
that yeah, there's no way to know that they did correctly identify those hairs in those past cases. And you can't really talk about hair analysis without talking about the investigation into the mother risk drug testing lab. And I'm sure you guys remember this a little bit. So,
Mhm.
This lab was considered the leader in the field of hair testing for drug abuse from the late 90s to 2015, and they were giving expert opinions on decisions involving child protection issues. And there was an independent review of them done after a mother appealed charges of administering cocaine to her young child in 2014. And it was after this and another review that we learned that their results and opinions were found to be unreliable and inadequate because of a lack of training and experience. The lab also used unconfirmed results and had no standard operating procedures. There was a whole bunch of other stuff going on, but I'm pretty sure it was this case where a mother had her children taken away from her after high levels of alcohol were found in her hair by this drug testing lab, and it was later learned that the alcohol was from the hairspray she was using, not from her actually drinking it.
That's so ridiculous. Like, if we can't differentiate between hairspray and alcohol, we probably shouldn't use it to take kids away from their parents.
Exactly. And I feel like there was something else where they're like, you can tell on the hair strand, like when they were using drugs or something, because there was like a stop, like there was some sort of marker, but the hair stopped growing for any sort of stress. Like you can't pinpoint it to something.
Hmm.
It's also dead. So, like, how much information can you really get from it?
That's fair.
This all being said, forensic hair analysis is a largely subjective, quote unquote, science. So use caution when convicting solely on it. And with this case specifically, I do question it. But when paired up with the fact that Sheila ended up marrying Mike Warren, the husband of her victim and her affair partner at the time, it
Yeah.
does kind of make you think that she did it.
And
Even
if not
like, and
like
even though she was convicted,
physically, yeah,
yeah.
if not physically involved heavily.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Um, it was a very weird case because if she hadn't ended up marrying Mike Warren, I feel like she never would have been prosecuted because that evidence is just too weak. But because she had married him, they
Yeah.
were kind of like, okay, job well done. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was circumstantial. But they were like, well, it kind of fits.
yeah. And you can't really convict someone for marrying someone else. Like, yeah, it was just a weird case.
Yeah, it seems like they really wouldn't have successfully convicted her if it wasn't for the plea deal.
Oh yeah, 100%. And even trying to find like the actual hair analysis evidence was
Hmm.
so difficult because you just Google this case and just news sources come up. So you're like, okay, no,
Oh
I
yeah.
actually want to
Okay.
get like the little bit of that. Like I want to hear from the police, not just
Yeah.
reporters about this case. But I couldn't find anything really,
Hmm.
which was
Hmm.
frustrating.
Yeah. I mean,
It's odd.
especially because it's a pretty recent case, which is
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
probably part of the reason they haven't released documents like that. But yeah,
True.
that is quite frustrating.
Yeah.
It's odd too, just like how out of the blue it was. Like, I don't know. I'd be curious to know if anything similar had happened in Sheila's past that would kind of warrant this level of violence just to be with someone.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it sounded like, from my brief look into her past, that she was this sweet, all American, like lovely young girl.
Mm,
And then she graduated or high school or whatever and started hanging out with older people. Like that's where she first met Richard,
right.
her
Hmm.
husband. And he was part of the KKK organization and he got into a shootout after with the police after smuggling marijuana or something, and he ended up spending 10 years in prison as a result of that. And she waited for him
Hmm.
and like moved closer to the prison to be kind of around him. And she was quite young at this point, like maybe
Yeah.
18
Yeah.
kind of deal. And so I like there was no murders that she had been linked to in the past, but she definitely had, oh, there was like a petty theft or something, some sort of, yeah, she just seemed
Association
like a,
with crime. in the past
Yeah,
at least.
not a
Yeah.
very nice person, but
Yeah.
she looks so sweet.
Yeah. Looks can be
So,
deceiving.
yeah,
It's
and so a
true.
lot of her friends, like, when this came out, they were like, "We just can't believe that Sheila would do something like this. Like, she was just the nicest girl. Like, we had no idea that she was
Mhm.
capable of something like this." So, but
I
then
feel
you
like
talk
there's
to
so
people
many
who,
cases like that. That's like, I never in a million years would think that so and so would do this, but then there's like another side of them that like you don't see, or like maybe
yeah, right.
someone else only saw the bad side. And it's like, oh yeah, I
Yeah,
can
or
see
you
it.
talk to people who, like, the people that worked under her in the Purple Cow, and they were like, "Yeah, no, she was
Yeah.
awful, like, a terrible
Mhm.
person."
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
you just
It's hard to
like,
say.
it's all hearsay. Yeah. But it's
Crazy.
sorry, it's so short. There really wasn't much on
I mean,
it.
I guess if you show up
There was
to a
a
house, shoot someone, drive away, and that's the only crime, we're not gonna
Yeah,
have like a
there
lot of
wasn't a lot of
information.
evidence.
But yeah,
And
that's crazy. You
mhm,
just dressed as a clown, you just drive up, bam. Like,
yeah,
that's
And a
just
clown
shocking.
too. Like that was effort that went into that. And I wouldn't, if I was looking for a way to hide my appearance to commit a crime, dressing up as a clown wouldn't be my first choice, I would say.
yeah,
It's a choice that ultimately makes sense if you have like the makeup, the wig,
yeah,
everything. Sure, I get it. But that to me then, like we had talked about, that takes premeditation. That is a
right?
Mhm.
plan to kill someone and not
Yeah.
something that would result in second degree.
Yeah.
And she would like, did she know that Joe had broken his leg? So she knew that if she dressed up as a clown with flowers and balloons and went to deliver them, no one would think that was weird.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
they
because
would
I
open
feel
the
like,
door.
yeah, because in a normal circumstance, like right now, if a clown showed up to my house with flowers and balloons, I'd be like,
Nope.
what is this? Like, what's
You,
going on?
you couldn't pay me to open the door.
Yeah, no. That door stays shut. I say thank you, leave them, bye.
I would just pretend I'm not home. I would like army crawl up the stairs. Like there's no way.
Yeah,
Cause
very
but I don't know if
brazen.
that's because of all the clown murders we've heard about and the 2016 clown killings. Like I don't know if that's just like
Yeah.
we've been taught to be scared of them, but maybe that was more commonplace in 1990 to have
Yeah.
clown visits.
I don't know
Weird.
what went on in the 90s.
I don't know.
um
Another interesting thing about this case was there was a clown sighting file that went missing. And so it was all the tips that people had phoned in of like seeing a clown in the neighborhood around the date of the murder. And it
That's
went
so
missing,
weird.
yeah, like right before the trial. And then they finally found it.
oh. I
And they
also
were
How
like,
wouldn't
many
think
clowns are in their neighborhood on a day-to-day basis?
I don't know. I was like, this is really weird. But there had been sightings, I think, of clowns in the area. But again,
who do
how
you
commonplace was that?
yeah, I'm like, who are you calling to let people know that you see clowns? I wouldn't think to call the cops to be like, "Hey, there's a clown on my in my neighborhood." Like it just doesn't seem like a time like worth telling the police about. But
Yeah. And I think it was like after it had happened and they knew the killer was a clown, they put out like a clown tip
oh,
line, like if you've seen a clown in your neighborhood, I think, not just
that's
like
like
there's a clown in my neighborhood.
It's so
imagine
weird.
like how stressed legitimate like birthday party clowns would be after this, just like going to gigs to be like, "Oh
Right?
man, are the cops gonna be called on me? I don't know."
It'd be so stressful.
Uh-huh.
That's so weird.
But yeah, so that is the case of Sheila Keen Warren.
I
And
was gonna
like
say
her
very
name kind of does give it
brazen.
away, but
Yeah, adding the Warren to the end.
yeah.
Very brazen to do it midday as well.
Yeah.
Like that's
Like
not something I
9
would
a.m.
either
maybe.
expect. Yeah,
Yeah, on a Monday.
on a Monday. Oh man.
I guess that's something else that I guess she said she was working, but
But if
if
she's
she goes to
repo,
kill these
like
people, like, was she late for work? Like, when did she check in? She obviously wasn't driving her repo truck. Like,
True.
that
what?
could be a thing though. Like if she clocked in at 8, said she was working
Hmm.
at just going for rounds. Well, what's stopping her from pulling into a separate lot, picking up the car, doing this, going back, dropping the car off, and then taking the truck, right?
Yeah, I just realized that it wasn't a Monday, it was a Saturday, and I got the date wrong. It happened on May 26th. I thought it happened on May 28th, which is
Oh,
a
okay.
Monday. So she
Okay.
bought the clown costume the night of May 25th, so the night before,
Oh.
not
3
3 days
days.
before.
But
Even
either way, like
still,
3 days before, the day before, like there's still premeditation.
Yeah, right?
the
And
day
also,
before is more damning, I would even say, too. Like, you buy it to plan to do it right away.
Mhm.
true.
I
I
don't know.
also like, it's just so curious, like someone buying something to like cover their identity for a crime. Why don't you just use something already in your house? That way there's
Yeah,
no surveillance of you buying this weird stuff. There's no receipt trail. Like it was just something already in your closet. You can make a mask out of a pillowcase.
exactly.
And I feel like clown costumes are easy enough. As long as you have like the face makeup, you can just
Yeah.
whip together random fabrics and make
Yeah.
something do. But I
Yeah.
get like the wig maybe and the white face paint. That would be kind of
Yeah.
an important piece. But
Yeah, true.
Definitely. And like she showed up right before closing. So the people did remember her because they thought it was so weird that she kind of rushed
they're
in
probably
right
like,
as they were
ah,
closing. Like, no, I
damn.
need to buy this clown outfit. And they're like, we're closed. She's like, no, 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 I'll be so quick.
Oh,
So like
okay. That's odd. That's so strange.
it's so weird because he really
Yeah.
stand out doing that. And if that's the same person, which I think maybe it is,
Yeah. But then what's the
but
rush too? Like if she's in such a need, why does it have to happen the next day? You know what it like
yeah,
if why not wait those 3 days like we initially thought sort of thing to
yeah,
plan it out rather than, oh, I need to buy this less than 12 hours later, I'm going to commit this crime.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. It's
I don't
very
know. A lot of questions.
very weird,
Yeah.
and like her and Mike being in a bit of a fight, like it, yeah.
Were they mid-fight when this happened? Like was this I'm going to kill her cuz I'm mad at Mike and maybe this will bring us closer together cuz I'll console him?
I think so because it was 2 weeks before that they stopped taking their long lunches, so they had been kind of like
Oh. So she
on the outs for
It's
about
like if
2
I
weeks.
can't have you, no one can have you, sort of thing.
Yeah, or like
Even though it
she's
was the
standing in my
wife and not
way.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, or if she like if they kind of work together,
yeah.
like, oh, you want to get out of this marriage and I want you out of this marriage and you also get a lot of money, so I'll kill your wife for you. And no one's admitting to anything, which is rare in cases I feel like, especially like this where you'd think they'd want to like brag about it.
Yeah.
Mhm. Hmm.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, that was a wild ride. It was
Mhm.
a impactful start too, I will say. That was a good way, a good draw on that one.
Mhm.
Um, I don't remember hearing about this at all, so I'm
I
glad
don't either.
yeah, I'm glad your
Yeah.
mom had this in the back of her brain. Love
It
that this
felt
was in the
like
back of her brain because why?
she had
But
seen it on Facebook or something, and I thought it sounds like a story that's like on the Snapchat news articles of like,
oh
Yeah, it
this
yeah,
turns
does.
out to be husband's second
Y-
wife or something.
like the
It
Daily
does.
Mail sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, but it
Um,
turned out to be true.
That's
crazy.
crazy.
Well, let our listeners know if you ever have a clown that knocks on your door, just don't answer. Maybe they have good intentions, but you don't need to answer. Um, but thank you very much for that. I learned lots. I'm very indifferent about clowns. I don't know. Clowns, I'm curious to learn why folks don't love clowns. But I
Mhm.
understand in situations like this, I'm sure the son's traumatized by clowns now. Like there
Yeah.
usually is something to warrant a clown scare. Um, but it is ominous to just have a clown show up. Like that would be more
Yeah.
unsettling than just the clown itself, I would say.
And
Yeah.
something else that I didn't think was important, but now kind of fits into the topic. Marlene loved clowns. Her and her
Oh,
mom loved clowns. Her mom has photos that Marlene has painted, like beautiful photos of clowns hung up in her
Oh.
house, like all over the place. And she holds
Oh.
no animosity towards clowns. She just hates the one that kills her daughter.
I
Okay,
mean,
so I
fair.
feel
Yeah.
like if okay, so then I feel like whoever killed her probably
New.
yeah,
Yeah.
knew that she liked clowns and would be comfortable opening the door to one.
Yeah.
Huh.
Very weird.
Yeah. Interesting. I've never met
So
someone who loves clowns.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get there's
Yeah.
like a big interest in like circuses or something like that, like performance clowns and like individuals like that.
Hmm.
When it's more of like a show and a production, but I'd be intrigued if they had like a connection back in whatever, their familial connection to clowns.
Mhm.
Maybe they just love how they, I don't know. There
Yeah.
could be many reasons. I don't need to know.
Right.
um But very cool. Thank you. I see, Rebecca, you have some information, some tidbit information, whether it be forensic or just a current event.
I do. It's actually from 2018. My dad sent this to me.
Oh, cool.
And it's got like I won't say a lot about it simply because I don't entirely understand a lot of what it's saying. It's a very heavy biology talk. Um but there's apparently this microbe out there called like it's I think it's a group of microbes called hemamastigotes.
Sure.
And
Okay.
apparently they were discovered in like 1988 or so. And scientists have never really been able to figure out where in the tree of life or like the taxonomy of evolution, they haven't been able to figure out where that fits in.
Oh,
Um,
I think I know of this. Continue.
yeah,
Maybe.
okay. So scientists have been trying to figure out like where this fits into the kingdoms for like a couple decades now, but apparently it's really hard to cultivate these microbes, so it's very hard to study them because it's hard to get like consistent samples. They haven't had the technology to do like run DNA and genomes and stuff. But in 2018, a Dalhousie graduate student um took a just like a dirt sample from a trail that she was hiking with her friends and brought it to the lab to monitor basically, and she found a hemamastigote and was like pumped about it because they're pretty hard to come across. And they did a study with like they were one of the first teams to sequence part of its genome, and
Cool.
they discovered that it actually broke off like an evolutionary branch like before we separated into like animals and fungi and plants. So it's like a whole new branch of the evolutionary tree that's not plant, animal, or fungi. It's hemamastigote.
That's
That's
really
Um
so
interesting.
cool.
yeah, so they called it this specific species Hemamastix cookwestjik or cookwestjik. It's named after a Mi'kmaq term or a Mi'kmaq word. So translated, the newly described Hemamastigote is the word cookwestjik is hairy rapacious ogre in Mi'kmaq.
Okay.
Nice.
So yeah, they're just these tiny little like single cellular eukaryotic organisms with like flagella, so like those little hairs that kind of like help them move around and stuff. And apparently I find it so funny. They're unicellular, but they're like a predator unicellular, so like they eat other little unicellular things.
Hmm.
Wild.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not a plant, it's not an animal, it's not a fungus, it's not a protozoa. It's just like like a whole new little kingdom of its own, which is super cool because we've known they've existed since 1988, but it wasn't until like 2018, the study done in Nova Scotia, that we learned that they branched off like way before everything else did. So that's super cool. And that's all I
It is
have to say
really
about
cool.
that.
That's So fascinating. Not at all what I thought it was, but along the same lines, because I had just come across something too where it was via fossils that were identified, but it was something that wasn't an animal, not a plant, bacteria, protozoa, archaea, like anything like that. But they believed too this thing was to a whole new kingdom on the taxonomy, whatever, but it's a prototaxite or
Oh.
prototaxites, I think. So
Hmm.
when you were saying like a whole different arm of it, I was like, oh, maybe it's that. But fascinating that now we have kind of two examples of that and that are still
Yeah.
kind of being looked into or researched is really
Yeah, it's so
exciting.
cool. Biology's cool, right?
Yeah. In
Yeah.
allegedly these prototaxites, I guess, existed before trees existed.
Wow.
So I don't know. I haven't done any research into it, so this is all just from one source that I found, and even then, who knows? But something maybe to worth falling into a rabbit hole for on
Yeah,
both
for
fronts.
sure. Absolutely.
Um,
It's so cool.
that's so cool. It's neat. Like we're always there's so much just given how old the Earth and the universe is. There will always be something to discover and always something new to be found, which I find one kind of scary, but also two awesome. There will always be opportunity to learn something.
Yeah, that's why I
Um,
love science. There's literally always something new to discover.
yeah,
Mhm.
right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I love that. Cool that it's local too, at least for us in terms of Canada and the East Coast. Um,
Hmm.
especially at Dow. That's really great.
Yeah.
Um, so our next topic, we will be covering Andrea Yates. I'm gonna go a little bit into like postpartum mental illness as well. I'll touch on. She's very much, from what I've seen, just active in the media. Not her herself, but her story has kind of
Hmm.
made a reappearance in the media. So it'll be kind of on brand for what may be floating around people's feeds. So I hope this can kind of help contribute to that a little bit and we learn some more information. Um, but you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok at What the Forensics. Our website is whattheforensics.ca. This is where you can find everything for our episodes, sources, recommendations. I will note we are human. If our sources aren't up when the episode is posted and you're looking for them, let us know. If not, they will be put up. Um, Timing just kind of varies. And our email is whattheforensics@gmail.com. You can reach out any questions, concerns, comments, recommendations. We're happy to chat. We're happy to learn new things too if you have anything to share. Um, but yeah, this has been another episode of What the Forensics. We hope you learned something new and we're excited to see you next time. Bye.
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 Just a reminder to everyone that we are not professionals in the forensic science field. We are just interested in forensics and want to share what we are learning with our listeners. We're trying to give you the most accurate information, but we are human and can make mistakes. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next week.